The arrival. Kael'thas, commander of the Zilurian Fourth Fleet, had seen war on worlds too numerous to count. He had fought in the scorching deserts of Jarin, navigated the acid storms of Telvot Prime, and overseen the subjugation of the Lunari colonies. Each battle followed the same rhythm: strategy, precision, and overwhelming firepower. War was a predictable dance, a puzzle solved by experience and calculation. Until now, the humans were supposed to be just another routine operation. Intelligence reports described them as primitive, fragile, and poorly organized, a fledgling species barely capable of coordinating defenses. Their technology was inferior, their ships slow, and their weapons simplistic. Kael'thas had smiled at the briefings, confident that this would be another swift conquest. Orbiting the human colony world, Kael'thas' command bridge was a hive of activity. Alien officers scrolled through tactical projections, their limbs twitching in anticipation. Sensors indicate minimal fortifications, Kael'thas remarked, his voice carrying the authority of decades of command. This will be a simple show of force. Deploy the first strike squadron, sweep their outposts, and secure the perimeter. The deployment was flawless, as Kael'thas expected. His ships glided through the planet's upper atmosphere with mechanical precision, scanning for resistance. And then he saw them, humans. Not hiding, not trembling, but preparing. Small groups moved through forests, erecting barricades from debris, planting crude but clever traps. Their weapons were unsophisticated by Xylarian standards, yet their movements were coordinated, purposeful. Kael'thas' first strike team descended, expecting easy targets. Within moments, they encountered resistance that defied expectation. Explosions erupted from hidden pits, and rudimentary projectile weapons found gaps in the aliens' armor. Kael'thas watched through tactical feeds as his soldiers fell, stunned by ambushes that should have been impossible. Yet it wasn't the weapons or tactics alone that caught him off guard. It was the humans themselves. When cornered, they did not flee. Civilians joined the fight, wielding farming tools as weapons. They screamed, not in fear, but in defiance, charging at superior forces with a reckless courage that made Kael'thas' veteran officers hesitate. One human, a young woman wielding nothing but a scorched metal rod, stood atop a ruined vehicle and repelled a squad of trained Xylarians. "Commander," one officer reported, voice tight with disbelief. "They are fighting back. Aggressively, even when outmatched." Kael'thas narrowed his eyes. He had seen stubborn species before, stubbornness bred from survival or fanaticism. But this was different. These humans were chaotic, unpredictable. Every encounter, every ambush, seemed driven not by desperation alone, but by something deeper, a raw, unrelenting emotion that powered their resistance. He leaned over the tactical console, observing the battlefield as human squads lured his troops into traps with an almost instinctive cunning. "They are adaptive," he muttered, almost to himself, "and their courage is unlike anything I've seen." The alien strike team regrouped, battered and wary. Kael'thas knew he had underestimated this species. Yet pride and instinct kept him from admitting it aloud. He would finish the operation, as planned. He always did. But now, a shadow of doubt had crept into his mind, a thought he had never entertained in centuries of warfare. Perhaps this battle would not follow the patterns he knew. As the first human reinforcements arrived from hidden bunkers, Kael'thas felt the unfamiliar tug of caution. He had anticipated a brief skirmish, a quick demonstration of Xylarian superiority. Instead, he faced creatures who fought with a ferocity that felt personal. They were defending more than territory. They were defending their lives, their families, their pride. And in that moment, Kael'thas realized that war, which had always been familiar, could suddenly feel unpredictable. The human colony had not yet revealed its full strength, but Kael'thas already sensed the storm to come. Something in the human's eyes, rage, determination, and the unyielding spark of life, warned him that this war would be unlike any other he had fought. For the first time in his long career, Kael'thas did not feel confident. He felt apprehensive, and in the depths of that apprehension, the first seed of respect and fear was planted. The first clash. Kael'thas had anticipated a brief display of human resistance, a skirmish that would be over before it truly began. Instead, he now faced something entirely new, calculated defiance fueled by raw emotion. The humans were not merely fighting. They were furious, unrelenting, and terrifyingly clever. His fleet moved into orbit, deploying the full assault squadron with precision. The colony below was relatively small, yet its defenders had transformed the terrain into a labyrinth of traps, barricades, and ambush points. Kael'thas observed the battlefield feeds with growing unease. Each human maneuver, each unexpected counterattack, forced him to revise his assumptions. The first major engagement began in the forested outskirts of the colony. Xylarian forces advanced confidently, plasma rifles calibrated to neutralize any human resistance. Yet the humans did not scatter. Instead, they struck with synchronized ferocity, detonating concealed explosives that tore through alien formations. Small bands of humans flanked the Xylarians, using improvised weapons to disrupt their rhythm. Kael'thas watched as a young human soldier, barely more than a boy by Xylarian standards, disarmed one of his officers and fought back until reinforcements intervened. Another group charged blindly at a mechanized unit, forcing its operators into defensive maneuvers. It was not recklessness, it was controlled chaos, each movement unpredictable, each choice driven by something deeper than strategy alone. "Commander," an officer reported, voice tight, "they are relentless. They do not fear death. Even when outmatched, they charge." They are human," Kael'thas interrupted, more to himself than to his officer. His gaze remained fixed on the feeds, observing the human's battlefield psychology with an alien curiosity he had never allowed himself before. Their ferocity was not blind. It was instinct combined with a spark of intelligence, amplified by emotion. Rage was not a weakness, it was a weapon. At the colony's central plaza, Commander Alara, the human's tactical leader, emerged as a figure of calm amidst chaos. She directed squads with fluid efficiency, predicting Xylarian movements and countering them with precision. Kael'thas studied her commands with a mix of fascination and frustration. Here was a creature who understood the limits of human strength and pushed beyond them, transforming desperation into strategy. The first decisive clash occurred when Xylarian infantry attempted a frontal assault on the colony's main barricade. Alara had anticipated the move. With a series of calculated feints, humans funneled the aliens into narrow corridors lined with explosive traps. The resulting carnage stunned Kael'thas. Hundreds of Xylarian soldiers fell in minutes, their disciplined formation shredded by humans who fought with a ferocity alien to Kael'thas' experience. He felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, apprehension. It was a quiet, creeping acknowledgement that humans were not merely another species to subjugate. They were dangerous, in ways his experience had never prepared him for. And then came the moment that truly shifted his perception. A civilian, a young woman carrying a child, charged at a squad of Xylarian soldiers to protect her home. She wielded nothing but a sharpened metal rod. Yet her rage transformed her into a force no alien weapon could immediately suppress. She struck with precision, dodged with instinct, and refused to yield even when injured. Kael'thas watched in disbelief as trained warriors hesitated, forced back by sheer human audacity. For the first time in centuries of warfare, Kael'thas questioned the inevitability of victory. These humans did not operate on logic alone. Their unpredictability, their willingness to sacrifice everything, and their sheer, unfiltered fury were unlike anything he had seen. By the end of the day, the Xylarians withdrew to regroup, their casualties heavier than anticipated. Kael'thas convened his officers in a secure command chamber. "These humans," he said slowly, each word measured, "are unlike any opponent we have faced. They fight not for honor, not for conquest, but for something far deeper. Their rage is tactical, controlled, devastating." Silence followed his statement. The veterans around him had never heard him speak with such caution. Kael'thas stared at the feeds, where fires burned in the human colony and defiant figures moved through smoke and rubble. This was no longer a familiar war. He had expected routine conquest. But now, he confronted something raw, terrifying, and awe-inspiring. The human's fury had revealed itself in full, and Kael'thas understood a truth he could not ignore. Underestimating them could be fatal. As night fell over the devastated outskirts, Kael'thas made a choice. He would not retreat entirely, but he would approach this battle differently. The humans were no longer just opponents. They were a force of nature, and to face them was to face a storm he had never imagined. Understanding the enemy, Kael'thas retreated his forces to a safer distance. Not out of fear, Xylarians did not retreat, but out of necessity. The humans were unlike any species he had faced before. Every engagement, every feint, and every act of defiance had revealed a pattern that both fascinated and unnerved him. He realized that to defeat them, he would have to study them, understand them, and adapt in ways he had never considered. From the observation deck of his command ship, Kael'thas scrutinized the human defenses. The colony was battered but far from broken. Fires smoldered in the streets, barricades had been torn down, yet humans moved with coordinated purpose. Scouts reported that they repaired traps, repositioned forces, and even constructed new fortifications under fire. They were learning faster than any species Kael'thas had encountered. He turned his gaze to Commander Ilara, the human tactician whose ingenuity had shattered his forces in the previous battle. She did not simply respond to threats. She anticipated them. Her soldiers moved in synchronized strikes, flanking, retreating, and counterattacking with a fluidity that was both organic and precise. Kael'thas began to see a principle underlying their fury. It was not chaos. It was controlled energy, emotion channeled into action with deadly efficiency. Kael'thas summoned his senior officers. "Observe," he commanded, projecting live feeds of human units maneuvering in the ruins. They are not fighting blindly. Each action has purpose. Each risk is calculated. Their courage is tactical, and their rage amplifies their adaptability. One officer, younger and brash, scoffed. "Commander, they are still primitive. Their weapons are inadequate. Their armor is weak. Surely we..." Kael'thas cut him off. "You do not understand. They compensate for weakness with something we have no measure for: willpower, tenacity, and a willingness to sacrifice themselves for one another. Watch carefully." As if to prove his point, a group of human soldiers advanced toward a heavily fortified Xylarian outpost. They were outnumbered nearly 3-1. Kael'thas expected a swift defeat. Instead, the humans used the terrain, setting traps in succession, luring Xylarians into ambush after ambush. Casualties mounted on both sides, but the humans pressed forward with relentless determination. Then came the moment that would haunt Kael'thas for the rest of his life. A human soldier, barely more than a boy, rushed into the line of fire to save a wounded comrade. The child of the colony, terrified yet determined, joined in, throwing rocks and debris to distract the Xylarians. Ilara herself moved among the lines, guiding, encouraging, and directing attacks in a way that turned desperation into advantage. Kael'thas felt a pang of something he had not experienced in centuries: awe. The human's fury was not mindless rage, it was purpose. It was love for one another, loyalty to their people, and a refusal to yield in the face of overwhelming odds. He had studied hundreds of species, yet none had harnessed emotion as a weapon in this way. He walked the length of the observation deck, pondering what he had seen. In all his years of warfare, he had relied on logic, strategy, and overwhelming force. But these humans rendered logic insufficient. Against them, the predictable patterns of conquest crumbled. He had underestimated them, and that underestimation could be fatal. Kael'thas made a decision. To defeat these humans, he would have to engage with their tactics, anticipate their unpredictability, and, most importantly, understand their fury. He could not simply overwhelm them with numbers or firepower. He had to anticipate the human spirit itself, and that was no small task. By nightfall, the battlefield quieted, but Kael'thas' mind was restless. Humans were rebuilding, strategizing, and preparing for the next encounter. He understood now that every human soldier, every civilian, and every act of defiance was a lesson. Each one taught him the raw truth: Humans were not just resilient. They were a force of nature, unpredictable, unyielding, and terrifyingly brilliant. For the first time in his career, Kael'thas did not feel confident of victory. He felt respect and a deep, knowing apprehension. War had always been familiar, controllable, and solvable. But humanity had changed everything. And as he watched the humans move through the ruins with methodical determination, Kael'thas realized a truth he could not deny. The fury he had dismissed as primitive was the most powerful weapon he had ever witnessed. Witnessing human rage. Kael'thas' fleet hung in orbit, the alien ships gleaming cold against the backdrop of the human colony below. Months of battle had taught him one thing. Humans were not predictable. Each engagement revealed new strategies, new depths of courage, and new forms of fury. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. The final assault began at dawn. Kael'thas had mobilized every available unit, determined to crush the colony before human ingenuity could rebuild further. Alien plasma cannons roared, tearing through trees and buildings. Xylarian infantry advanced with disciplined precision. Yet, as the first volley struck, he saw it. Humans were not retreating. They were charging, not in panic, but in deliberate, furious counterattack. Commander Alara led the assault. Her figure moved through the chaos like a living beacon, rallying soldiers, civilians, and even children pressed into defensive roles. Molotovs, improvised explosives, and makeshift melee weapons flowed from their hands with lethal intent. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet their cohesion was perfect, their fury contagious. Kael'thas watched in disbelief as a squadron of alien shock troops advanced only to be met by a torrent of human counterattacks. Explosions ripped through their formation, while humans surged forward in perfect synchronization, their screams of defiance cutting through the hum of alien machinery. One Xylarian unit commander fell to a human wielding nothing more than a sharpened farming tool, another thrown into disarray by civilians hurling debris with uncanny timing. It was not mere desperation. Kael'thas realized, with a chill that tightened his chest, that the humans were drawing power from something deeper: love for their kin, devotion to their land, and a fury born from countless generations of survival. Rage was their armor, courage their shield, and unpredictability their weapon. Every time he thought the humans would break, they surged forward with renewed force, unyielding and terrifying. In the heart of the colony, Ilara orchestrated the humans' movements with surgical precision. Kael'thas saw entire battalions lured into traps and annihilated, only to be replaced by human squads that emerged from hidden tunnels, forested ridges, and ruins. The alien lines buckled under the weight of relentless attacks, and even Kael'thas' elite units faltered, unprepared for the intensity of human fury. Kael'thas realized that the humans' rage was not chaotic. It was disciplined chaos, an unpredictable force guided by instinct, intellect, and emotion. He recalled every battle he had fought across the galaxy and understood that no other species had ever weaponized emotion so effectively. They were simultaneously fearful and fearless, fragile yet unbreakable, ordinary yet unstoppable. A single human soldier, barely more than a boy, captured his attention. He charged a heavily armored mech alone, drawing its fire and distracting its operators long enough for other humans to flank and destroy it. Nearby, a group of civilians lifted a fallen comrade, shielding him from alien fire, the determination radiating through the battlefield. Kael'thas' mind raced. This was not just war. This was a revelation. The turning point came when Ilara herself confronted the alien command center. Leading a final, furious assault, she breached the perimeter with a mixture of cunning, courage, and rage that no Xylarian defenses could withstand. Alien communications faltered, units became disoriented, and Kael'thas, watching the chaos unfold from orbit, felt a deep, unshakable respect for the species he had underestimated. For the first time in his centuries of command, Kael'thas did not feel in control. He felt awe, fear, and the undeniable truth that humans could never be measured by standard metrics of war. Their strength lay not in technology, numbers, or training. It lay in their spirit, in their rage, in the unyielding will to survive and protect one another. When the smoke finally cleared, the colony still stood, battered but defiant. Alien casualties were heavy. The fleet had been forced to withdraw, and Kael'thas faced a reality he could not deny. Humans were not just survivors, they were warriors beyond reckoning. Kael'thas sat alone in his command chamber, watching the humans celebrate quietly among the ruins. He reflected on everything he had seen, their unpredictability, their strategic genius, and the raw, consuming fury that had carried them through impossible odds. For the first time, he understood a universal truth. Underestimating humanity was fatal. Their rage was not just emotion, it was power, unstoppable and indomitable. War had always been familiar to Kael'thas, but the humans had shown him something entirely new. Fury was not just chaos. It was a force of nature, and in humanity, that force was limitless.